Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Perfect Storm. Staff Sergeant Cole Brennan adjusted his combat gear as the Afghan sun blazed overhead. After 3 tours in this godforsaken desert, he'd learned to read the signs, the subtle shift in wind patterns, the way locals avoided certain areas, the nervous energy that preceded an attack. Today felt different, though. Today felt like an ending. At 32, Cole had built himself into something most men only pretended to be. 6'2" of lean muscle, earned through years of military discipline and combat experience. His steel gray eyes had seen things that would break lesser men, and his hands had done things that haunted him in the quiet moments. But it was his mind that made him truly dangerous, analytical, patient, and utterly ruthless when crossed. Growing up in rural Montana, Cole had learned early that respect was earned through strength and kept through fear. His father, a former Marine, had beaten those lessons into him with a leather belt and iron fists. "Never show weakness, boy," the old man would growl between swings. "The world will eat you alive if you let it." Cole's mother had left when he was 12, unable to handle the violence that permeated their home. She'd promised to take him with her, then disappeared in the night with nothing but a note on the kitchen table. That betrayal had shaped him more than any bullet or bomb. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford, and forgiveness was a weakness he'd carved out of himself with surgical precision. The military had given him purpose, structure, and most importantly, Lisa. Lisa Brennan had been everything Cole thought he wanted. Blonde, petite, with a smile that could light up a room and enough charm to make anyone believe they were special. They'd met at a military barbecue 5 years ago, and she'd pursued him with the kind of aggressive flirtation that most men found irresistible. She claimed to love his strength, his dedication, his unwavering loyalty. She'd married him 6 months later in a courthouse ceremony, promising to wait through deployments and build a life together. What Cole hadn't known was that Lisa viewed marriage as a transaction. She wanted the security, the benefits, the status of being a military wife. But she also wanted freedom, excitement, and men who could give her things Cole's modest sergeant's salary couldn't provide. While he was bleeding in foreign deserts, she was bleeding their accounts dry on shopping sprees and girls' trips that weren't quite what they seemed. The satellite phone in his tent crackled to life, interrupting his thoughts. Lisa's number flashed on the screen, and despite everything his instincts told him, Cole felt a familiar warmth. She rarely called during operations, which made this feel special. "Hey, beautiful," he answered, settling onto his cot. "How's my girl?" There was a pause. Then Lisa's voice came through, artificially bright. "Cole, honey, I have some news." Something in her tone made his combat instincts flare. He'd learned to read people's voices the way he read battlefield terrain. Every inflection was a potential threat indicator. "I'm pregnant," she said, and for a moment, Cole's world stopped. They'd been trying for 2 years before this deployment. The news should have filled him with joy. "But it's not yours." The words hit him like a sniper's bullet, sudden, devastating, and changing everything in an instant. Cole's expression didn't change, but his free hand slowly clenched into a fist. "It's my boss's," Lisa continued, her voice gaining confidence as if she'd rehearsed this speech. "Todd and we've been together for 8 months. We're in love, Cole. Real love. We're getting married next month. I want a divorce." Todd Masterson. Cole knew the name. Lisa had mentioned him before, her boss at the real estate office where she worked part-time. Mid-40s, divorced, drove a BMW, and owned half the commercial properties in their hometown. Everything Cole wasn't. "Cole, are you there?" He was there, but the man who'd answered the phone was already gone. In his place sat something colder, harder, infinitely more dangerous. Cole had learned long ago that emotion was a luxury that got soldiers killed. Right now, he needed to be a soldier. "Congratulations," he said simply. The line went quiet for a moment. Lisa had clearly expected anger, tears, begging. The calm acceptance in his voice unsettled her more than screaming would have. "Cole, he hung up. For several minutes, Cole sat in the silence of his tent, processing. 3 tours in Afghanistan had taught him that survival depended on adapting quickly to new realities. The man who'd answered that phone call was dead. The husband who'd loved and trusted was dead. What remained was a predator with nothing left to lose. Cole made one call. "Martinez? It's Brennan. I need a favor." Sergeant First Class Diego Martinez had served with Cole in Iraq before Afghanistan. More importantly, he'd made connections in the civilian world, the kind of connections that could make problems disappear or create new ones for the right price. What kind of favor, hermano? The kind that requires your special skills and absolute discretion. This about your wife. Cole wasn't surprised Martinez knew. News traveled fast in their tight-knit unit, and Diego had always been too observant for his own good. Among other things, I'll wire you 50 grand when I get back. All I need is information and opportunity. You know I'm in, brother. What's the target? Todd Masterson, real estate developer in Millfield, Montana. I want to know everything. Where he lives, where he goes, who he owes, who he's fucked over, what he's afraid of. Everything. And the timeline? Cole looked at his deployment calendar. 4 weeks left in country. I land stateside in 30 days. I want options waiting for me. Consider it done. And Cole, whatever you're planning, be smart about it. Cole almost smiled. I'm always smart about it. After ending the call, he sat back and began to plan. Lisa thought she'd caught him off guard, that his quiet acceptance meant defeat. She had no idea she'd just awakened something that should have stayed buried. Todd Masterson thought he'd won the prize. A beautiful young wife and no consequences for destroying another man's life. They were both about to learn that some men don't just get mad. Some men get even. And Cole Brennan was very, very good at getting even. Chapter 2. Homecoming. 28 days later, Cole stepped off the transport plane at Fort Harrison feeling like a stranger in his own skin. The Montana air was crisp and clean, free of the dust and smoke that had filled his lungs for 15 months. But beneath the surface normalcy, something predatory moved through his veins like a slow poison. Diego Martinez was waiting by the terminal, leaning against his truck with the easy confidence of a man who'd never met a problem he couldn't solve. At 35, Diego was shorter than Cole but built like a tank, with arms covered in tattoos that told the story of 2 tours in Iraq and 3 in Afghanistan. His dark eyes missed nothing, and his smile could convince anyone he was their best friend, right up until he broke their kneecaps. "Welcome home, hermano," Diego said, embracing Cole briefly. "You look like hell." "Feel worse." Cole threw his duffel bag in the truck bed. "Please tell me you have good news." "I have excellent news. Todd Masterson is everything you hoped he'd be, and worse." Diego pulled out a thick manila folder as they climbed into the truck. Real estate mogul, city council member, pillar of the community. Also a cocaine addict, gambling degenerate, and serial adulterer who's been using his position to pressure young women into bed for years. Cole flipped through photographs, financial records, and what looked like surveillance reports. Diego had been thorough. The best part? He owes serious money to some very serious people. Tony Russo's crew out of Billings. $250,000 in gambling debts, and they're getting impatient. Cole knew about Tony Russo. The man ran drugs, guns, and women through half of Montana, and his enforcers weren't known for their gentle collection methods. How impatient? Broke his accountant's fingers last week. Masterson's been scrambling to liquidate assets, but most of his wealth is tied up in properties that can't move fast enough. And Lisa? Diego's expression darkened. Living in his penthouse downtown. Spending money like it grows on trees. Already planning their wedding for next month. Going to be a big society event. She's been telling people you were abusive, that she had to escape before you killed her. Cole's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. Smart girl. Building her narrative early. There's more. Diego pulled out a tablet showing social media posts. She's been playing the victim online too. Poor military wife trapped with an unstable veteran who threatened her life. She's got half the town believing she's some kind of brave survivor. The posts were masterfully crafted, just enough detail to seem authentic, vague enough to avoid actual defamation. Lisa had always been good at manipulating people's emotions. That's how she'd hooked him in the first place. Any kids involved? Masterson has 2 from his first marriage. Teenage boys who hate his guts and live with their mother in Seattle. The pregnancy announcement was made public last week. They're billing it as their first child together. Cole studied a photo of Lisa at some charity gala, her hand resting on a barely visible bump, beaming at the camera while Masterson's arm wrapped possessively around her waist. She looked radiant, happy in a way she'd never looked with him. That should have hurt. Instead, it just made him angry. Transportation? Truck's yours as long as you need it. Clean weapons are in the lockbox if things get messy. I've also got a place lined up for you. Cabin about 20 miles outside town. Isolated, secure, and off any official records. You've been busy. I've been motivated. Lisa came to see Carmen last week. Cole raised an eyebrow. Carmen was Diego's wife, a sweet woman who'd always been kind to military spouses. Wanted to explain the situation and make sure Carmen understood that you were dangerous and unstable. Even suggested Carmen should be careful around me since I was your friend. Diego's hands tightened on the steering wheel. She made my wife afraid of me, Cole. That makes this personal. Good. Personal is better. It means fewer questions later. They drove in comfortable silence toward the outskirts of Millfield, Cole's hometown of 15,000 people where everyone knew everyone else's business. The kind of place where reputations mattered more than truth, and Todd Masterson had spent years building his. What's the play? Diego asked as they turned onto a gravel road leading into the mountains. Simple. I'm going to give them exactly what they want. Which is? Cole smiled for the first time since the phone call. It wasn't a pleasant expression. A monster. The cabin was perfect, an old hunting lodge hidden in thick pine forest, accessible only by a single winding road. Solar power, satellite internet, and enough isolation to conduct business without interference. Diego had stocked it with everything Cole might need: surveillance equipment, untraceable phones, and a small arsenal that would make most militia groups jealous. One more thing, Diego said as they unloaded Cole's gear. Masterson's got a private security company watching his properties. Nothing too serious, rent-a-cops mostly. But they're armed and supposedly trained. How many? 4 guys on rotation. Ex-cops who got kicked off the force for various reasons. More bark than bite, but they know the territory. Cole nodded, already calculating. Security guards were creatures of habit, and habits could be exploited. The key was patience, something he'd learned to cultivate in the mountains of Afghanistan, where one mistake could get your entire squad killed. Timeline. Weddings in 3 weeks. Russo's people gave Masterson until after the honeymoon to pay up. Apparently, they think he'll liquidate more assets once he's legally connected to Lisa's family money. Cole paused. What family money? Diego's grin was predatory. That's the beautiful part. Lisa's been telling everyone her family has money tied up in investments. Truth is, her father's a barely functional alcoholic who works at the grain elevator, and her mother cleans houses. The only money she'll bring to the marriage is whatever she can steal from Masterson's accounts. So she's running a con. A damn good one. Girl's got skills. Cole felt a twisted pride despite himself. Lisa had always been smart. He just hadn't realized how smart. She'd played multiple angles, convincing Masterson she was bringing money to the relationship while positioning herself as the innocent victim of an abusive marriage. It was actually impressive. It was also going to get her killed. That night, alone in the cabin, Cole spread Diego's intelligence across the kitchen table like a general planning a campaign. Photos of Masterson's properties, surveillance schedules, financial records, personal habits, and known associates. But it was the photo of Lisa that held his attention longest. She looked different. Older, more confident, wearing clothes that cost more than Cole made in a month. The scared young woman who'd married him was gone, replaced by someone harder, more calculating. Good. He'd hated the idea of destroying someone innocent. Cole's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Cole? It's Lisa. We need to talk. Please. He stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. She'd made her choices. Now it was time to live with the consequences. Outside, the Montana wind howled through the pines, carrying the scent of snow and the promise of winter. Cole began to plan, each detail falling into place with military precision. By the time spring came to the mountains, Todd Masterson and Lisa would understand what happened when you betrayed a man who'd learned to kill professionally. But first, he needed to become someone they'd never suspect. Chapter 3. The Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. 3 days later, Cole walked into Millfield's only diner looking like a broken man. His shoulders slouched with defeat, his clothes were wrinkled and unwashed, and his eyes held the hollow stare of someone who'd lost everything. The performance was so convincing that Martha Hedrick, who'd known him since childhood, immediately rushed over with coffee and sympathy. "Oh, honey," she whispered, her weathered face creased with concern. "I heard about Lisa. I'm so sorry." Cole let his voice crack slightly. I don't understand how it happened. I thought we were happy. Within an hour, half the town knew Cole Brennan was back, and within 2 hours, everyone had an opinion about his situation. The consensus was mixed. Some saw him as a victim of a faithless wife. Others wondered if Lisa's claims about abuse might be true. Cole encouraged both narratives, playing different roles for different audiences. At the hardware store, he was the devastated husband seeking closure. At the bar, he was the dangerous veteran barely holding himself together. With the church ladies, he was the faithful Christian trying to forgive his wife's betrayal. Each performance was carefully calibrated to create exactly the reaction he needed. "Heard you were back in town," came a voice from behind him as he sat at the bar, nursing his third beer. Cole turned to see Frank Morrison, Millfield's police chief and Todd Masterson's golf partner. Frank was the kind of small-town cop who'd gotten fat and lazy on a diet of traffic tickets and domestic disputes. His uniform strained against his gut, and his eyes held the dull suspicion of a man who saw threats everywhere but understood none of them. "Frank." Cole's voice was carefully neutral. "Just trying to figure out my next move." "Well, I hope that next move doesn't involve any trouble. We got a peaceful town here, and I aim to keep it that way." Cole allowed himself to look confused. "Trouble? I just want to understand what happened to my marriage." "Your wife says you threatened her. Says you got violent when she tried to leave." "Lisa said that." Cole let genuine surprise color his voice. "Frank, you've known me since high school. When have I ever raised a hand to a woman?" Frank's certainty wavered slightly. Cole had indeed been a model citizen before joining the military, star quarterback, honor student, the kind of young man everyone expected great things from. People change, especially after what you boys see over there. "Maybe." Cole took a long pull of his beer. "But I never threatened Lisa. I love her. That's what makes this so hard." The performance was perfect, just vulnerable enough to seem authentic, just defensive enough to maintain his dignity. Frank left looking troubled, which was exactly what Cole wanted. Doubt was a powerful weapon when wielded correctly. By the end of the week, Cole had established his cover identity throughout Millfield. To most people, he was a broken man trying to piece his life back together. He'd rented a small apartment downtown, gotten a job doing manual labor for a construction company, and started attending grief counseling sessions at the local church. Every move was designed to create the appearance of a man struggling with his demons, but ultimately harmless. Only Diego knew the truth, and Diego was back in Arizona handling his own business. The real work happened after dark. Cole's military training included advanced surveillance techniques, and Todd Masterson was an easy target. The man was a creature of habit. Gym at 6 a.m., office by 8, lunch at the country club, evening drinks at his penthouse, or various social functions. His security team was competent but predictable, rotating shifts every 8 hours and following the same patrol routes each night. More importantly, Masterson was getting desperate. Cole had watched him take 3 phone calls from Tony Russo's people in the past week, each conversation leaving him more agitated than the last. The wedding was supposed to solve his financial problems, but Cole was beginning to understand that wouldn't be enough. Russo wanted his money, and he wanted it before the honeymoon ended. Lisa was proving to be a complication she hadn't anticipated. The girl was smart, but she was also greedy. She'd been pressuring Masterson to put properties in her name, claiming it was for tax purposes and estate planning. What she really wanted was insurance, assets that couldn't be touched if Masterson's other problems caught up with him. Cole had been inside their penthouse twice while they were out, planting listening devices and cameras throughout the space. What he'd learned was fascinating. "You promised me security." Lisa's voice came through his headphones as he sat in his truck outside their building. "How is this secure when you owe money to gangsters?" "It's temporary," Masterson replied, stress evident in his voice. "After the wedding, after I consolidate some assets, everything will be fine." "What assets?" "The only liquid cash you have is tied up in projects that won't pay out for months. And that's assuming they pay out at all." Cole smiled. Lisa had been doing her homework. She'd learned enough about Masterson's business to understand just how precarious his position really was. The Patterson deal will close next month. $60 million in development fees. Assuming the environmental reports come back clean. Assuming the city council approves the zoning changes. Assuming your partners don't decide they'd rather cut you out entirely. That won't happen. Why? Because you're so trustworthy? Because you're such a loyal business partner? Todd, You're sleeping with another man's wife and planning to marry her while he's deployed overseas. What exactly about that screams integrity? The irony was beautiful. Lisa was critiquing Masterson's character while conveniently ignoring her own role in the betrayal. But she was also revealing something important. She didn't trust him any more than he should trust her. Besides, Lisa continued, what happens when Cole gets back? You think he's just going to accept this? From what I remember, he's not the type to walk away quietly. Your husband's a soldier, not a killer. And even if he was, I've got security. I've got connections. I've got resources he can't match. You'd better hope you're right. Cole chuckled as he turned off the surveillance equipment. If they only knew how right and wrong they were at the same time. His phone buzzed with another text from Lisa. Cole, please. I know you're in town. We need to talk. I can explain everything. This time, he responded, tomorrow night. Riverside Park. 9 p.m. Come alone. It was time to let them know the monster was awake. The next morning brought a call that changed everything. Cole was checking his surveillance equipment when his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. Is this Cole Brennan? Depends who's asking. This is Tony Russo. I think we need to have a conversation. Cole's blood went cold. Tony Russo wasn't supposed to know he existed, let alone have his phone number. Either Diego had been compromised, or Cole had made a mistake somewhere. I think you have the wrong number. No, Mr. Brennan, I definitely have the right number. See, I make it my business to know about everyone who might affect my investments. And Todd Masterson is a significant investment. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you don't. Just like you don't know that you've been watching Masterson's building for the past week. Just like you don't know that your friend Martinez made some very specific inquiries about my business operations. Cole's mind raced. Russo was obviously having him watched, but how long had it been going on? And more importantly, what did he want? Here's what's going to happen, Russo continued. You're going to meet me at the old cement plant on Highway 12. Tomorrow night, midnight. You're going to come alone, and you're going to listen to what I have to say. And if I don't, then I'll have a conversation with Todd Masterson about his wife's dangerous ex-husband who's been stalking them. I'll provide photos, recordings, and enough evidence to have you arrested for harassment at minimum. Your military record won't help you when you're violating a restraining order. The line went dead. Cole sat in his truck, processing this new development. Tony Russo was either trying to recruit him or eliminate him as a threat. Either way, the game had just gotten infinitely more dangerous. He looked at his watch. 6 hours until he was supposed to meet Lisa. 12 hours until he faced one of Montana's most dangerous criminals. Time to find out which monster was more dangerous, the one he'd become, or the one that had been hunting him all along. Chapter 4, Devils and Deals. The Riverside Park meeting was a trap, and Cole walked into it deliberately. He arrived 30 minutes early, positioning himself in the tree line with night vision gear and a clear view of the entire area. Lisa showed up precisely on time, wearing a long coat and looking nervously around the empty park. She wasn't alone. 2 of Masterson's security guards were positioned near the parking area, trying to look casual while scanning for threats. Cole smiled. They were thinking like bodyguards, not like soldiers. Their positioning was defensive, designed to protect Lisa from a direct confrontation. They hadn't considered that their target might be above them, watching through military-grade optics with a clear shot at all 3. At 9:15, Lisa's phone rang. Cole watched her answer with shaking hands. Where are you? Her voice carried clearly in the cold night air. Close enough to see Masterson's rent-a-cops hiding behind the gazebo, Cole replied. Tell them to stand down, or this conversation doesn't happen. Lisa gestured frantically to the guards, who reluctantly moved back to their vehicle but remained visible. Good enough. Walk to the center of the park. Hands visible. No sudden movements. Cole waited until she reached the old playground equipment before emerging from the shadows like a ghost. Lisa gasped when she saw him. This wasn't the man she'd married. Cole moved with predatory grace, his eyes scanning constantly for threats, his body coiled with lethal potential. Hello, Lisa. Cole. She stopped, clearly struggling with what to say. You look different. War changes people. So does betrayal. I never meant for it to happen this way. Todd and I, we fell in love. I didn't plan it. Cole circled her slowly, staying just outside arm's reach. No, you planned it very carefully. The question is how long you've been planning it. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've had time to think. About all those conversations where you encouraged me to deploy again. About the credit cards you opened in my name. About the girls' trips that weren't with girls. Cole's voice remained eerily calm. Tell me, how many men were there before Todd? Lisa's face went pale. That's not. I wasn't. The bartender from Murphy's? The contractor who did our kitchen? Or maybe that real estate agent who helped us buy the house? Each name hit her like a physical blow. Did you think I wouldn't figure it out eventually? How could you possibly know? Because I'm very good at finding things out. It's what kept me alive for 3 tours. Cole stopped circling, facing her directly. You've been cheating since year 2. Todd's just the first one with enough money to make leaving worthwhile. Lisa's mask finally slipped, revealing something cold and calculating underneath. So what? You were never here anyway. Always off playing soldier, leaving me alone for months at a time. What did you expect? I expected my wife to honor her vows. Vows? Lisa laughed bitterly. You want to talk about vows? You promised to love and cherish me, but you loved that uniform more. You promised to put me first, but the army always came first. You promised me a future, but you spent 3 years risking your life in a desert on the other side of the world. And you promised to wait for me. People promise lots of things, Cole. That doesn't make them realistic. For a moment, they stared at each other across an invisible chasm that had been growing for years. Cole realized that the woman he'd loved had never really existed, or if she had, she'd died long before that phone call in Afghanistan. What do you want? Lisa asked finally. I want you to be happy, Cole said, and for the first time he meant it. I want you to marry Todd and live the life you've chosen. I want you to have his baby and all the money you think you deserve. Lisa looked suspicious. Just like that. Just like that. But I want something in return. What? I want you to remember this moment. I want you to remember that I could have made this very different. When everything falls apart, and it will fall apart, I want you to remember that I gave you a chance to just disappear. Is that a threat? Cole's smile was gentle, which somehow made it infinitely more terrifying. No, Lisa. It's a kindness. Probably the last one you'll get from me. He turned and walked back toward the tree line, leaving her standing alone in the playground. Cole, she called after him. What's that supposed to mean? What aren't you telling me? But he was already gone, vanishing into the darkness like smoke. The cement plant on Highway 12 had been abandoned for 20 years, its concrete walls tagged with graffiti and its windows long since shattered. It was the perfect place for the kind of conversation that didn't happen in polite society. Cole arrived 2 hours early, conducting a thorough reconnaissance of the area. Russo had chosen well. The location was isolated, with multiple exit routes and clear sight lines in all directions. But Cole had advantages that most of Russo's usual visitors lacked. He knew how to move unseen, how to identify threats, and most importantly, how to kill quickly and quietly if the situation demanded it. Tony Russo arrived precisely at midnight in a black SUV with 2 bodyguards. Cole watched through his rifle scope as they swept the area with practiced efficiency. These weren't small-town security guards. They moved like professionals, checking corners and maintaining fields of fire as they advanced. Mr. Brennan. Russo's voice echoed through the empty building. I know you're here. Let's not play games. Cole considered his options. He could put a bullet through Russo's head from 300 yards and be gone before the bodyguards knew what happened. But that would solve one problem while creating 10 others. Better to see what the man wanted. Your men stay outside. Cole called from somewhere in the shadows. Of course, this is a civilized conversation between businessmen. Cole laughed at that, but emerged from his hiding spot with hands visible. Russo was smaller than he'd expected, maybe 5'8" and built like a boxer who'd gone soft. His suit probably cost more than Cole made in 6 months, and his eyes held the flat coldness of a man who'd killed before and would kill again without hesitation. You're younger than I expected, Russo said conversationally. You're shorter. Fair enough. Russo pulled out a silver cigarette case and offered one to Cole, who declined. Do you know why I asked you here? Because you think I'm a threat to your investment. Are you? Cole considered the question carefully. That depends on what kind of investment you think you're protecting. Todd Masterson owes me $250,000. In the legitimate business world, that would be a manageable debt. In my world, it represents credibility. If I let one man default without consequences, soon everyone thinks they can stiff Tony Russo. So you need him to pay? I need him to pay publicly and painfully. Otherwise, I look weak. Russo took a long drag of his cigarette. Your wife's marriage to Masterson was supposed to solve this problem. Her family's money would have covered the debt with interest. Except Lisa's family doesn't have any money. Exactly. Russo's smile was sharp as a blade, which puts Mr. Masterson in a very difficult position. He's promised me payment in full by the end of the month, but his only liquid assets are tied up in development projects that won't pay out for months, if ever. Cole began to understand where this was going. And you think I can help solve this problem? I think you have skills that could be very useful. I also think you have motivations that align with my interests. You want me to kill him. I want you to collect a debt. How you choose to do that is entirely up to you. Cole pretended to consider the offer. What's my percentage? 10% of whatever you recover, plus my assistance with any personal matters you might want to handle. What kind of assistance? Russo flicked his cigarette into the darkness. The kind that makes problems disappear permanently. The kind that ensures certain people never cause trouble again. The kind that a man with your particular background might find very valuable. It was a tempting offer, and Cole let his expression show that he was genuinely considering it. In reality, he was already 3 steps ahead, seeing how Russo's needs could serve his own purposes. I'll need operational freedom. No questions about methods or timeline. Of course, I'm a businessman, not a micromanager, and I'll need assurance that this arrangement stays between us. If Masterson's security team gets wind of this, it complicates everything. Mr. Brennan, discretion is the foundation of my business. No one will know about our arrangement unless you want them to. Cole extended his hand. Then we have a deal. Russo's handshake was firm and dry. Welcome to the team, Mr. Brennan. I have a feeling this is going to be a very profitable relationship. As Cole drove back toward town, he felt the familiar calm that came with a solid plan falling into place. Russo thought he'd recruited a soldier to collect his debt. Lisa thought she'd convinced her ex-husband to accept defeat gracefully. Masterson thought his security and connections would protect him from any consequences. They were all about to learn that Cole Brennan had never been the man they thought he was. The real operation was about to begin. Chapter 5, The Hunt Begins. Cole spent the next 3 days being exactly what everyone expected him to be, a broken veteran struggling to rebuild his life. He showed up to his construction job on time, attended his therapy sessions religiously, and even started dating a waitress from the diner named Rebecca Walsh. To anyone watching, he looked like a man who'd accepted his circumstances and was trying to move forward. Rebecca was perfect for his cover, a divorced mother of 2 who worked double shifts to support her kids. She was kind, genuine, and desperate enough for companionship that she didn't ask too many questions about Cole's past. He felt guilty about using her, but the alternative was letting Lisa and Masterson destroy him without consequences. You seem different tonight, Rebecca said as they shared coffee after her shift ended. More relaxed. Just feeling like maybe things might work out after all, Cole replied, letting her interpret that however she wanted. I'm glad. You deserve to be happy after everything you've been through. Cole nodded, thinking about what happiness meant to a man like him. It wasn't the simple pleasures that most people sought. For Cole, happiness was the satisfaction of a mission accomplished, the peace that came from knowing his enemies had been neutralized completely. While Cole played the role of healing veteran, his real work happened in the shadows. He'd identified 3 separate vulnerabilities in Masterson's life that could be exploited individually or in combination. The key was timing. Each phase had to build on the previous one, creating a cascade of disasters that would leave his target with nowhere to run. Phase 1 was already in motion. Todd Masterson had built his real estate empire on a foundation of bribes, kickbacks, and insider information. The City Planning Commission had been in his pocket for years, approving zoning changes and development permits that tripled the value of his properties. But that corruption had left a paper trail, and Cole had spent weeks photographing documents and recording conversations that would destroy Masterson's political connections. The beauty of using Masterson's corruption against him was that it would look like natural consequences rather than targeted revenge. A crusading journalist, an anonymous tip to the FBI, a coincidental audit. Any of these could bring down his empire without pointing back to Cole. But Cole wanted more than financial ruin. He wanted total destruction. Phase 2 targeted something Masterson valued more than money, his reputation. You sure about this? Diego asked as they sat in Cole's truck outside Masterson's country club. Diego had returned from Arizona with a trunk full of specialized equipment and an eagerness to get back into the action. I'm sure. How's the surveillance package? State of the art. Audio, video, GPS tracking, the works. Once we plant these devices, we'll know everything Masterson does, says, or thinks. And the blackmail material? Diego grinned and pulled out a tablet showing several high-resolution photographs. 3 different women, all young enough to be his daughters, all employees of companies he does business with. None of them looked particularly willing. Cole studied the images. Masterson in hotel rooms with girls who looked terrified, drugged, or both. The photos had been taken over the past 6 months by a private investigator working for one of the women's families. How'd you get these? Let's just say Tony Russo isn't the only one with an interest in Mr. Masterson's activities. Turns out he's made a lot of enemies over the years. Any of them willing to go public? Not yet, but they might be more motivated if Masterson's position became less secure. Cole nodded. Fear was a powerful motivator, but so was opportunity. Once Masterson started looking vulnerable, his victims would find their courage quickly enough. What about Lisa? Diego's expression darkened. Your wife's been busy. Bank records show she's been moving money out of their joint accounts into a personal account in the Cayman Islands. Girl's not taking any chances. Smart. How much? $2 million so far. All legally transferred, so she can't be charged with theft. But it's definitely not what a loving fiancé would do. Cole felt a twisted respect for Lisa's cunning. She'd learned to protect herself in a world where men like Masterson held all the power. Too bad she'd never learned to recognize real danger when it was standing right in front of her. Any contact from Russo? Radio silence. But his people have been asking questions about your military record. They want to know exactly what kind of soldier they've hired. What did you tell them? The truth. 3 tours, exemplary service record, decorations for valor under fire. The kind of man who gets the job done no matter what it costs. Good. Let them think they know what they're dealing with. That night, Cole and Diego penetrated Masterson's penthouse security like ghosts moving through a graveyard. The guards were competent but predictable, following their patrol routes with the mindless precision of men who'd never expected to face a real threat. Cole could have killed all 4 of them without breaking a sweat, but that would have been counterproductive. Instead, they planted listening devices throughout the apartment, installed cameras in strategic locations, and copied the contents of Masterson's computer files. By dawn, they knew more about his business than his own accountants did. What they discovered was even better than Cole had hoped. Son of a bitch is completely underwater, Diego whispered as they reviewed the financial records. The Patterson development deal? It's a Ponzi scheme. He's been using new investor money to pay returns to existing investors while skimming millions for personal use. How long before it collapses? 6 months, maybe less. When it does, he'll be looking at federal fraud charges that could put him away for 20 years. Cole smiled. Masterson thought he was playing chess while Cole was playing 3-dimensional warfare. The man's own greed would provide the weapons for his destruction. There's more, Diego continued. Lisa doesn't know about the Patterson deal. She thinks they're living off legitimate real estate profits. So when it collapses, she'll be as surprised as everyone else. And twice as angry. Nothing like finding out your meal ticket is counterfeit. Cole's phone buzzed with a message from Rebecca. Had a wonderful time tonight. Can't wait to see you again tomorrow. He stared at the text for a long moment, feeling something that might have been guilt. Rebecca was a good woman who deserved better than being used as cover for his operation. But Cole had learned long ago that good people often got hurt when evil people made bad choices. He hadn't created this situation. He was just managing the consequences. Another message came through. This one from Lisa. I know you're planning something. Todd's security team says you've been watching us. Please don't do anything stupid. Cole deleted the message without responding. Lisa was finally beginning to understand the kind of man she'd married and betrayed. Too late to matter, but fear was always educational. The final message came from an unknown number. Masterson's getting nervous. Might be time to accelerate our timeline. TR. Tony Russo was getting impatient, which meant Cole needed to start applying more direct pressure. Phase 1 had been about gathering intelligence and positioning assets. Phase 2 would be about psychological warfare, making Masterson and Lisa understand that their comfortable world was built on quicksand. Phase 3 would be about watching them sink. Cole looked at his watch. 3:47 a.m. In 12 hours, Todd Masterson would receive a package that would change everything. In 24 hours, Lisa would discover that the man she'd chosen over her husband had secrets that made Cole's violent past look like a children's story. And in 72 hours, they would both understand that some betrayals carry consequences that last forever. The hunt had begun. Chapter 6. Pressure Points. The package arrived at Masterson's office at 10:15 a.m., delivered by a courier service that specialized in untraceable communications. Inside the unmarked envelope were 3 items. A photograph of Masterson entering a hotel with a girl who couldn't have been older than 19, a USB drive containing financial records that proved his Patterson development was a fraud, and a simple note written in block letters, "Pay your debts." Cole watched from across the street as Masterson's secretary signed for the delivery, noting the timestamp for future reference. His surveillance equipment would record Masterson's reaction when he opened the package, providing valuable intelligence about the man's emotional state and decision-making process under pressure. 20 minutes later, Masterson's voice came through Cole's headphones, shrill with panic. What the hell is this supposed to mean? Masterson was on the phone with someone, his voice tight with stress. I don't owe you anything beyond what we agreed. The response was inaudible, but Masterson's face went pale as he listened. That's impossible. Nobody has access to those files. They're encrypted, password protected. Another pause, longer this time. No, absolutely not. I won't be blackmailed by some 2-bit gangster who thinks he can. Masterson stopped mid-sentence, apparently cut off by whoever was on the other end. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. I need more time. The Patterson deal closes next month, and then I'll have your money. All of it, with interest. Cole smiled. Masterson was making the classic mistake of trying to negotiate from a position of weakness. The man was obviously rattled, which meant he was vulnerable to making even bigger mistakes. Lisa, Masterson shouted toward the outer office. Get in here. Now. Lisa appeared in the doorway wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than most people made in a month. She looked radiant and confident, completely unaware that her world was about to implode. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. Masterson showed her the photograph without saying a word. Lisa's expression shifted from confusion to disgust to cold calculation in the space of seconds. Who is she? Nobody important. A business associate's daughter. We were discussing her father's investment portfolio. In a hotel room? It was a confidential matter. Her father preferred discretion. Lisa wasn't buying it, but Cole could see her weighing her options. She could confront Masterson about his obvious lie, or she could focus on the more immediate threat to their financial security. Who sent this? I don't know. Could be anyone. Business is competitive, and I've made some enemies over the years. What about the USB drive? Masterson's jaw tightened. Financial records. Incomplete and taken out of context, but damaging if misinterpreted. How damaging? Potentially significant. Lisa studied the photograph again, and Cole could practically see the wheels turning in her head. She was smart enough to recognize that this wasn't about business competition. This was personal. It's Cole, isn't it? Masterson looked genuinely surprised. Your ex-husband? How could he possibly? You don't know him like I do. He's not the simple soldier everyone thinks he is. He's smart, patient, and absolutely ruthless when someone crosses him. He's one man. I have security, connections, resources. Resources that apparently didn't stop someone from getting into your private files and taking compromising photographs. For the first time since Cole had started watching him, Masterson looked genuinely afraid. Lisa's assessment had cut through his usual bluster and forced him to confront the reality of his situation. What do you suggest? We accelerate the wedding. Move up the timeline, get legally married, and then deal with whatever this is from a position of strength. How does getting married help us? Because married couples can't be forced to testify against each other. Because my name on your assets makes them harder to seize. And because if Cole is behind this, he'll have a harder time maintaining his emotional detachment once we make it official. Cole had to admire her strategic thinking. Lisa understood human psychology better than most trained interrogators. She was absolutely right that making their relationship legal would complicate his emotional response. She was also completely wrong about what that might mean for their safety. When? Masterson asked. This weekend. City Hall, just the two of us, sign the papers and make it legal. We can always have a big ceremony later when this blows over. And if it doesn't blow over? Lisa's smile was cold as winter. Then we disappear. I've been preparing for that possibility since the day I moved in with you. Cole's admiration for Lisa's cunning was tempered by the realization that she'd been planning her escape route from the beginning. She'd never trusted Masterson any more than she'd trusted him. The only difference was that Masterson was useful to her right now. His phone buzzed with a text from Tony Russo. Heard your boy got some interesting mail today. Time to turn up the heat. Cole responded, already in motion. Recommend patience. Patience doesn't pay my bills. Results do. You'll have results. But if we move too fast, we lose operational control. There was a long pause before Russo replied, 48 hours. Then we do this my way. Cole pocketed his phone and checked his watch. If Masterson and Lisa were moving up their wedding timeline, he'd need to accelerate his own plans. Phase 2 required careful orchestration, and he was running out of time to set all the pieces in motion. That evening, Cole met with Diego at their safe house to review the intelligence gathered from the day's surveillance. They're spooked, Diego reported. Masterson's been making phone calls all afternoon, trying to figure out who's behind the package. He's even hired a private security firm to conduct a threat assessment. Any luck identifying the source? None. The courier service uses fake addresses and cash payments. The photographs were taken with untraceable equipment. Even the USB drive was wiped clean of identifying metadata. Good. What about Lisa? She's been busy too. Made 3 calls to offshore banks, transferred another $1 million to her Cayman account, and booked a flight to Switzerland for next Tuesday. Cole raised an eyebrow. Switzerland. Round trip, first class, open return date. Girl's definitely preparing for a quick exit. She's smarter than I gave her credit for. Smart enough to be dangerous. If she gets spooked and runs before we're finished. She won't run. Not yet. She's too greedy to walk away from Masterson's money, and too proud to admit that her plan isn't working. Cole spread aerial photographs of Masterson's various properties across the table. But we need to accelerate the timeline. Russo's getting impatient, and if he moves unilaterally, it compromises everything. What's the play? Direct action. Tonight, we hit 3 targets simultaneously. Masterson's office, his warehouse complex, and his personal computer systems. We want him to understand that nowhere is safe. That's a significant escalation. He might go to the police. With what? A photograph of him with an underage girl? Financial records that prove he's running a Ponzi scheme? Admitting he's being blackmailed would require explaining why he's vulnerable to blackmail. Diego nodded slowly. And the end game? Cole's smile was predatory. Masterson's going to disappear. Permanently. But not before he destroys Lisa's life the way she destroyed mine. You want him to take her down with him? I want her to understand what it feels like to have everything she cares about stripped away piece by piece. Money, security, reputation, future, all of it gone because she couldn't honor the promises she made. And then she gets to live with the consequences of her choices. Just like everyone else. Outside, the Montana wind howled through the mountains, carrying the scent of snow and the promise of a long, cold winter. Inside the cabin, 2 soldiers planned the kind of operation that would haunt their targets for whatever time they had left. By morning, Todd Masterson would understand that his comfortable world had been built on a foundation of lies, and that foundation was crumbling beneath his feet. By tomorrow night, Lisa would discover that the man she'd betrayed had been holding back his true nature out of love. And by the end of the week, they would both learn that some people are dangerous not because of what they're willing to do, but because of what they're capable of becoming when pushed too far. The war was about to begin in earnest. Chapter 7. The Perfect Storm. Cole's simultaneous strike against Masterson's empire began at 2:47 a.m. with military precision. While Diego handled the warehouse complex on the east side of town, Cole infiltrated the downtown office building where Masterson conducted his legitimate business. The third target, Masterson's personal computer network, was being handled remotely by a contact Diego had cultivated in the cybersecurity world. Masterson's office security was laughably inadequate compared to the Taliban strongholds Cole had breached in Afghanistan. He was inside the building within 6 minutes, past the private security, and into Masterson's personal office without triggering a single alarm. The man's arrogance had made him careless. He'd relied on his political connections and reputation rather than actual security measures. Cole wasn't there to steal anything. His mission was psychological warfare. He repositioned every item in Masterson's office by exactly 2 inches, close enough to seem normal at first glance, but wrong enough to create a persistent sense of unease. He left the bathroom faucet dripping at precisely 7-second intervals. He adjusted the thermostat to 68 degrees, just uncomfortable enough to be annoying. Most importantly, he left a single playing card on Masterson's desk, the Ace of Spades, traditionally known as the death card. The beauty of these intrusions was their subtlety. Masterson would spend the entire day feeling like something was wrong without being able to identify exactly what. The cumulative effect would be a persistent anxiety that would erode his decision-making capabilities and make him increasingly paranoid. Meanwhile, Diego was leaving his own calling cards at the warehouse complex. Nothing dramatic, just small signs that someone had been there. A door left unlocked that should have been secured. Security cameras repositioned to face slightly different angles. A coffee cup left on a desk where no coffee cup should have been. The cyber attack was more direct. By 4 a.m., Masterson's computer systems had been compromised, his files copied, and his email accounts monitored. More importantly, his financial records had been subtly altered, not enough to cause immediate problems, but enough to create discrepancies that would be discovered during any detailed audit. At 6:15 a.m., Cole was back in his apartment, showered and dressed for another day of construction work. To anyone watching, he'd been home all night, exhausted from manual labor and early bedtimes. His alibi was perfect. The first indication that their operation had succeeded came at 8:30 a.m. when Masterson's voice crackled through Cole's surveillance equipment. Something's wrong, Masterson was telling his head of security. My office, everything's been moved. Someone was here last night. The alarm system shows no breaches, sir. No signs of forced entry, no missing items. I don't care what the alarm system shows. Look at this playing card. This wasn't here yesterday. Cole could hear the strain in Masterson's voice. The man was already on edge from the previous day's package, and this new violation of his personal space had pushed him closer to panic. Could have been the cleaning crew, sir. Sometimes they move things around. The cleaning crew doesn't leave playing cards on executive desks. At 9:45 a.m., Lisa arrived at the office to find Masterson examining every inch of his workspace with a magnifying glass, looking for evidence of intrusion. You're being paranoid, she said, but her voice carried less conviction than usual. Someone was in here. I can feel it. Even if that's true, what did they take? What did they do? You're getting worked up over someone moving your stapler 2 inches to the left. But Cole could see that Lisa was shaken too. She kept glancing around the office as if expecting to see hidden cameras or listening devices. Her intuition was correct, but her ability to act on that intuition was limited by her need to maintain the fiction that everything was under control. At 11:20 a.m., Masterson received a call from his warehouse manager. Mr. Masterson, we've got a situation here. Someone was in the building last night. What do you mean, someone was in the building? Security says there's no record of any breach, but things have been moved around. Doors that should have been locked were open. Coffee in the break room that nobody remembers making. Cole watched Masterson's face go pale. 2 separate facilities, both compromised on the same night, both with no evidence of actual crime. It was exactly the kind of psychological pressure that would make a guilty man assume the worst. Have you checked the inventory? Everything's accounted for, sir. Nothing missing, nothing damaged. It's almost like someone just wanted us to know they'd been here. Increase security immediately. Double the guard shifts, install additional cameras, and I want a complete review of all access protocols. Yes, sir. Should I contact the police? Masterson hesitated. Calling the police would mean explaining why he thought someone was targeting him, which would inevitably lead to questions about his business practices and personal life. No, handle it internally for now. At 1:30 p.m., the financial discrepancies began to surface. Masterson's accountant called with concerns about irregularities in the Patterson development accounts. The numbers don't add up, Todd. According to these records, you've been transferring funds between accounts in patterns that don't match our previous reports. That's impossible. I haven't made any unauthorized transfers. I'm not saying you did. I'm saying someone has been making changes to the digital records. Either we've been hacked, or there's been some kind of systematic error in our accounting software. Cole smiled as he listened to the conversation. The beauty of his cyber attack was its subtlety. It didn't steal money or destroy files. It just created enough confusion to make Masterson question the integrity of his own financial systems. How much are we talking about? Hard to say. Could be discrepancies totaling anywhere from 50,000 to 2 million, depending on which records are accurate. I'll need to do a complete audit to determine the extent of the problem. How long will that take? 2 weeks minimum, assuming full cooperation from all parties. Masterson couldn't afford a 2-week audit. He owed Tony Russo $250,000 in 6 days, and his only source of liquid capital was the Patterson Development Fund. If that money was tied up in an accounting investigation, he'd have no way to make his payment. Can't you just fix the discrepancies without a full audit? Todd, if someone has been manipulating our financial records, we need to understand the scope of the problem. Fixing symptoms without addressing the cause could expose us to serious legal liability. Legal liability for what? Fraud, embezzlement, tax evasion. Take your pick. If the IRS or SEC decides to investigate these discrepancies, we need to be able to prove that any errors were unintentional. Cole could hear the panic rising in Masterson's voice. The man was beginning to understand that his empire was built on a foundation of sand, and someone was systematically removing every grain. At 3:45 p.m., Lisa confronted Masterson directly. We need to talk. Privately. They moved to his inner office, but of course Cole could hear every word through his surveillance equipment. This isn't random corporate espionage, Lisa said. Someone is targeting us specifically. Someone who knows our routines, our security measures, our financial structure. You think it's your ex-husband. I know it's my ex-husband. The question is what he wants and how far he's willing to go to get it. What does he want? Revenge? Money? You back. He wants to destroy us. Completely and utterly. Cole doesn't do anything halfway. For the first time, Masterson seemed to grasp the reality of his situation. What kind of man did you marry? The kind who spent 3 tours in Afghanistan hunting terrorists through cave systems and mountain ranges. The kind who received commendations for actions that are still classified. The kind who can kill a man with his bare hands and make it look like an accident. You're describing a psychopath. No, I'm describing a soldier. There's a difference, but not one that matters much if you're his target. Cole felt a strange pride hearing Lisa's assessment. She finally understood what she'd given up, what she'd betrayed. Too late to matter, but understanding was always better than ignorance. So what do? We run. Tonight. We take whatever liquid assets we can access, get on that flight to Switzerland, and disappear until this blows over. I can't just disappear. I have obligations, responsibilities. You have a choice between your responsibilities and your life. Choose wisely. Masterson was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with defeat. How much can we access immediately? 3 million, maybe 4 if we liquidate everything today. And your offshore accounts? Another 2 million, but those take time to access. So we're talking about starting over with maybe $6 million. It's enough to live comfortably anywhere in the world where extradition is complicated. Cole could hear them making plans, choosing destinations, discussing logistics. They were running scared, which meant his psychological campaign was working perfectly. But he couldn't let them actually escape, not until they'd paid the full price for their betrayal. It was time for Phase 3. At 6:30 p.m., Cole's phone rang with a call from Tony Russo. I hear your boy's having a difficult day. Information travels fast in a small town. Information travels fast when I have people watching every move he makes. When do we collect? Soon. He's liquidating assets as we speak. Good. Because I just got word that he's booked flights out of the country for tomorrow night. If he runs before we get our money, he won't run. I guarantee it. How can you be so sure? Cole smiled as he watched Masterson and Lisa through his surveillance feed, frantically packing documents and preparing for their escape. Because I'm about to give him something more important to worry about than your debt. The final phase of Cole's plan would destroy everything Masterson and Lisa thought they knew about power, security, and escape. By tomorrow night, they would understand that some prisons have no walls, and some sentences have no appeals. The hunt was almost over. Chapter 8, The Reckoning. At 8:47 p.m., Todd Masterson received a phone call that changed everything. Mr. Masterson? This is Detective Sarah Morrison with the Montana State Police. We need to speak with you immediately regarding allegations of sexual assault and financial fraud. Cole watched through his surveillance equipment as Masterson's face went completely white. Lisa, who was busy packing their escape luggage, stopped mid-motion and stared at him. "I think there's been some mistake, Detective." "I haven't. Sir, we have multiple complainants and extensive documentation. I strongly advise you to contact an attorney and arrange to come in for questioning voluntarily. The alternative is a warrant and arrest in front of your neighbors." Masterson's hands were shaking as he hung up the phone. The detective was real. Cole had made sure of that. So were the complainants. Diego had spent the past week locating and encouraging Masterson's previous victims to come forward, providing them with evidence and legal support they'd never had before. "What's happening?" Lisa demanded. "The police. They want to question me about." Masterson couldn't finish the sentence. "About what?" "Sexual assault. Financial fraud. Multiple complainants." Lisa stared at him for a long moment, and Cole could see her mentally reviewing everything she knew about the man she'd planned to marry. The lavish lifestyle, the expensive gifts, the mysterious business trips, the young women who worked for his various companies. "How many?" she asked quietly. "How many what? How many women?" Masterson's silence was answer enough. "Jesus Christ, Todd. What have you done? Nothing that wasn't consensual. Nothing that wasn't mutually beneficial." "Mutually beneficial?" Lisa's voice rose to a near shriek. "You've been raping employees and calling it mutually beneficial. I never raped anyone. These are business relationships, professional arrangements. With teenagers. That photograph that was sent to your office. She can't be older than 19. Her father owed money to some very dangerous people. I helped solve his problem, and she helped solve mine. Everyone benefited." For the first time since Cole had known her, Lisa looked genuinely horrified. Whatever she'd imagined about Masterson's character, this level of predatory behavior was beyond what she'd bargained for. "We have to run. Now. Tonight." "Where?" "If the police are involved, they'll have my passport flagged. They'll be watching the airports, the borders. Then we drive. Mexico, Canada, anywhere but here." Masterson was pacing now, his usual confidence completely shattered. "You don't understand. These aren't just local police. If they're talking about financial fraud, that means federal involvement. FBI, IRS, SEC, they have resources we can't outrun. So what do you suggest? That we just surrender? I suggest we figure out who's behind this and eliminate the threat." Lisa laughed bitterly. "Eliminate the threat? Todd, the threat is your own behavior. You can't eliminate the consequences of being a predator and a fraud. Someone orchestrated this. Someone gathered evidence, contacted victims, coordinated with law enforcement. This didn't happen naturally. Of course it didn't happen naturally. It happened because you're guilty of everything they're accusing you of." Cole was fascinated by the dynamic playing out before him. Lisa had finally seen Masterson clearly, and she was realizing that she'd hitched her future to a man whose crimes made her own betrayals look trivial by comparison. At 10:15 p.m., Masterson's lawyer arrived, a nervous man named Gerald Price who specialized in white-collar defense. Cole watched through the window as Price reviewed documents and listened to Masterson's increasingly desperate explanations. "The good news," Price finally said, "is that most of these allegations are several years old. Statute of limitations might protect you from some of the sexual assault charges. And the bad news? The financial fraud is ongoing and well documented. Wire fraud, securities fraud, investor fraud. These are federal crimes with 20-year sentences. And if they can prove you used coercion or blackmail in any of your sexual encounters, those charges become federal too. What are my options? Cooperation. If you can provide information about other criminal activities, other perpetrators, the federal prosecutors might be willing to negotiate reduced sentences. I don't know anything about other criminal activities." Price raised an eyebrow. "Mr. Masterson, you owe $250,000 to Tony Russo. That's not exactly a legitimate business debt." Cole smiled. Price was sharper than he'd expected. The lawyer had obviously done his homework and understood exactly what kind of man his client was. "How did you?" "It's my job to know these things. And if you think you can keep that debt secret from federal investigators, you're naive. They'll find every connection, every transaction, every relationship." At 11:30 p.m., Cole's phone rang. Tony Russo's voice was tight, with controlled anger. "What the hell is going on? I've got federal agents asking questions about my business relationship with Masterson. Natural consequences. The man's been running multiple criminal enterprises for years. It was only a matter of time before someone noticed. Someone noticed because someone made sure they noticed. Was this part of your plan? Cole considered his response carefully. My plan was to collect your debt. This is just the most efficient method. Efficient? If Masterson gets arrested, how does that help me recover my money? Because now he's desperate enough to do anything to avoid federal prison, including liquidating every asset he has to pay off debts that might disappear if their creditors were to help with his legal problems. There was a long pause as Russo processed the implications. You want me to offer him protection in exchange for payment. I want you to offer him hope. Whether you follow through is entirely up to you. And if he doesn't have the money, then you have a federal case that will seize all his assets anyway. Either way, you recover your investment. Russo's laughter was cold and calculating. You're a devious son of a bitch, Brennan. I respect that. I'm a professional. There's a difference. At midnight, Cole made his final move. The call came to Masterson's cell phone from an untraceable number. Mr. Masterson? You don't know me, but I have information that might help your situation. Who is this? Someone who understands that your current legal problems were manufactured by people with specific agendas. I can provide evidence that might discredit your accusers and cast doubt on the federal investigation. Masterson looked at Lisa, who shook her head frantically. But desperation had made him willing to grasp at any lifeline. What kind of evidence? The kind that shows your victims were paid to make false accusations. The kind that proves the financial discrepancies in your accounts were created by outside hackers. The kind that demonstrates this entire investigation is a coordinated attack by people who want to destroy you. Why would you help me? Because I have my own issues with the people behind this attack. Enemy of my enemy, and all that. What do you want in return? $2 million. Cash. Tonight. Lisa was making frantic gestures, trying to get Masterson to hang up. But he was already too far gone to listen to reason. $2 million is most of my liquid assets. Mr. Masterson, federal prison sentences for your alleged crimes start at 20 years. How much is your freedom worth? An hour later, Masterson was driving through the Montana wilderness with $2 million in cash, following directions to a remote location where he believed salvation waited. Lisa had refused to come, finally understanding that any deal made under these circumstances was guaranteed to end badly. Cole was waiting at the designated meeting spot, an abandoned mining camp 20 miles from the nearest road. When Masterson's car pulled up, Cole stepped out of the shadows wearing military fatigues and a balaclava that obscured his features. You have the money? Masterson held up a duffel bag with shaking hands. $2 million, as agreed. Now where's this evidence you promised? There is no evidence, Todd. Something in Cole's voice made Masterson step backward toward his car. What do you mean? I mean your victims are real. Your crimes are real. The investigation is real. The only thing that was manufactured was the hope that you could escape consequences. Cole pulled off the balaclava, revealing his face for the first time. Hello, Todd. I'm Cole Brennan, Lisa's husband. Masterson's legs nearly gave out. You did all this. I did all this. The surveillance, the psychological pressure, the federal investigation, the legal problems, all of it designed to bring you to this moment. What do you want? Cole's smile was colder than the mountain air. I want you to understand what you took from me. Lisa was my wife, my future, my reason for surviving 3 tours in Afghanistan. You destroyed that for money and sex. I'll give it back. The money, Lisa, all of it. I'll disappear, leave the country, never contact her again. It's too late for that. The federal charges are real, even if I helped coordinate their timing. You're going to prison, Todd. The only question is what happens before you get there. Masterson looked around desperately, as if searching for escape routes in the darkness. What do you want me to do? I want you to call Lisa. I want you to tell her exactly what kind of man you are, exactly what you've done to those women, exactly how you've been lying to her since the day you met. She already knows. She knows you're a predator. She doesn't know about the murders. Masterson went completely still. What murders? Cole pulled out a tablet showing surveillance footage of Masterson meeting with 2 men in a parking garage 6 months earlier. The conversation was inaudible, but the body language was clear, money changing hands, instructions being given, promises being made. Jennifer Walsh, 22 years old, working her way through college. She was going to expose your arrangement with her employer. You had her killed and made it look like a robbery. That's not. I never. Maria Santos, 19 years old, supporting her family by working at your development company. She recorded conversations where you admitted to fraud. You had her car sabotaged on a mountain road. Cole showed him more footage, more evidence, more proof of crimes that Masterson thought he'd covered perfectly. You're not just a predator and a fraud, Todd. You're a killer. And when the FBI finds this evidence, which they will, you'll be looking at the death penalty instead of just prison. Masterson was crying now, all pretense of dignity gone. Please. I'll do anything. I'll pay anything. Call Lisa. Tell her the truth. All of it. With shaking hands, Masterson dialed Lisa's number. Todd, where are you? The police came by the apartment looking for you. Lisa, I need to tell you something. About the women, about the business, about everything. Cole listened as Masterson confessed to years of rape, murder, fraud, and corruption. With each revelation, Lisa's voice became smaller, more horrified, more distant. You killed them? She whispered finally. I had to. They were going to destroy everything we built together. We didn't build anything together. You built an empire of rape and murder, and I was just stupid enough to think it was legitimate. Lisa, please. Don't ever contact me again. If I see you, if I hear from you, if you even think about me, I'll turn over everything I know to the FBI myself. The line went dead. Cole took the phone from Masterson's unresisting hands. Now you understand. She's gone. Your money's gone. Your freedom's gone. Everything you thought you had was built on lies, and now those lies have collapsed. What happens now? Cole pulled out a satellite phone and dialed a number. Tony? It's Cole. I have your money. Yes, all of it. Masterson's at the old Copper Creek mine. He'll be there when you arrive. He hung up and looked at Masterson. Tony Russo and his associates will be here in an hour. I suggest you use that time to make peace with whatever God you believe in. You're just going to leave me here? I'm going to give you exactly what you gave me. A chance to watch everything you care about disappear while you're powerless to stop it. Cole climbed into his truck and drove away, leaving Todd Masterson alone in the wilderness with $2 million he'd never spend and an hour to live. Justice, Cole reflected, wasn't always about courts and laws. Sometimes it was about making sure the right people ended up in the right place at the right time. The hunt was almost over. Chapter 9. The End of All Things. 6 weeks later, Cole Brennan sat in a coffee shop in Billings, Montana, reading the newspaper account of Todd Masterson's disappearance. The official story was that he'd fled the country to avoid federal prosecution, leaving behind a web of financial fraud and sexual assault allegations that had destroyed his business empire and political connections. The unofficial story, whispered in bars and diners throughout the state, was that Tony Russo had finally collected his debt in the most permanent way possible. Lisa's fate had been more complex, and in many ways more satisfying. The federal investigation had revealed that while she wasn't directly involved in Masterson's crimes, she'd been systematically laundering money through her offshore accounts. The IRS had frozen her assets, seized her passport, and charged her with tax evasion and conspiracy to commit fraud. She was looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison, followed by a lifetime of financial monitoring. But that wasn't enough for Cole. The real punishment was what had happened to her reputation. Through carefully leaked information and anonymous tips, Cole had ensured that everyone in Millfield knew exactly what kind of woman Lisa had become. The faithful military wife facade had been stripped away to reveal someone who'd married for money, cheated for excitement, and betrayed everyone who'd ever trusted her. Her family had disowned her. Her friends had abandoned her. The other military wives had ostracized her completely. She was facing prison as a pariah, with no support system and no future to look forward to. Cole's phone buzzed with a message from Rebecca Walsh. Miss you. Hope your business trip is going well. He'd had to end their relationship, of course. Rebecca was a good woman who deserved better than being used as cover for his operation. He'd told her he was taking a job out of state, promised to stay in touch, and sent her enough money to cover her rent for 6 months. It wasn't much, but it was all he could do to minimize the collateral damage from his choices. Diego had returned to Arizona with his own share of the money they'd recovered from Masterson's accounts. $2 million would go a long way toward ensuring his family's security, and Cole felt good about rewarding the man who'd risked everything to help him find justice. Any regrets? Diego had asked during their final meeting. About Masterson? None. About Lisa? Cole had considered that question carefully. I regret that she made the choices she made. I regret that I didn't see what she really was earlier. But I don't regret the consequences she's facing. And now I disappear. Cole had spent 3 years learning to kill professionally and 15 months perfecting those skills in actual combat. But this operation had taught him something more valuable: how to destroy someone completely without firing a single shot. It was a skill set that certain organizations would find extremely valuable. His phone rang with a call from an unlisted number. "Mr. Brennan? My name is Jonathan Crawford. I represent certain interests that might have use for your particular talents." "What kind of interests?" "The kind that require discretion, professionalism, and the ability to solve problems that conventional law enforcement can't touch." Cole looked around the coffee shop, noting the exits, the potential witnesses, the escape routes. Old habits died hard. "I'm listening." "There's a gentleman in Seattle who's been embezzling from children's charities. The legal system can't touch him because he's covered his tracks too well, but his victims deserve justice." "What kind of justice?" "The kind that ensures he never hurts anyone again. The kind that recovers the stolen money for its rightful purposes. The kind that demonstrates what happens when people prey on the innocent." Cole smiled. "When do I start?" "As soon as you're ready. There's a substantial retainer involved, plus expenses and performance bonuses. You'll be well compensated for your efforts." "And my operational freedom?" "Complete. We provide targets and objectives. Methods and timeline are entirely up to you." Cole closed the newspaper and walked out of the coffee shop toward his truck. In the back was everything he owned: weapons, surveillance equipment, fake identification documents, and enough cash to disappear anywhere in the world. He'd started this operation as a betrayed husband seeking revenge. He was ending it as something much more dangerous: a professional killer with a talent for making the guilty destroy themselves. Lisa had wanted him to be different, to be someone who could give her the excitement and wealth she craved. Todd Masterson had thought he was dealing with a simple soldier who could be intimidated or eliminated. They'd both been wrong. Cole Brennan wasn't a different man. He was exactly the man he'd always been. They'd just never bothered to understand what that meant. As he drove out of Billings toward his next assignment, Cole thought about the conversation he'd had with Lisa in the park weeks earlier. He'd told her he wanted her to be happy, and in a strange way, he still meant it. She'd gotten exactly what she'd chosen: a life built on lies, money stolen from others, and consequences that would follow her forever. Some people called that justice. Cole called it mathematics. Every action had an equal and opposite reaction. Every choice had consequences. Every betrayal had a price. Lisa had wanted to betray her husband for a better life. Todd had wanted to build wealth through crime and violence. Tony Russo had wanted his money back with interest. They'd all gotten exactly what they'd asked for. Cole's phone buzzed with a final message from Lisa's number. "I know what you did. I know it was you. I hope you're satisfied." He deleted the message without responding. Satisfaction wasn't the right word for what he felt. Peace, maybe. Justice, certainly. But not satisfaction. Satisfaction implied that the score was settled, that the debt was paid, that everyone could move on with their lives. But Cole had learned something important during this operation. He was very good at what he did. He enjoyed the challenge, the complexity, the precision required to destroy someone completely. And there were a lot of people in the world who deserved exactly that kind of attention. Lisa and Todd had just been practice. Now the real work could begin. As his truck disappeared into the Montana wilderness, Cole Brennan became exactly what his wife had always feared he might become: a man with nothing left to lose and everything to gain from other people's downfall. The hunt never ended. It just found new prey.